39 people are confirmed dead in southern China after a 66-year-old reservoir dam collapsed and released roughly 93 million cubic meters of water into the city of Nanning. 9 more are still missing. As of Thursday, July 9th, 130,000 people have been evacuated across Guangxi province, and 375,000 are directly affected. Downstream, the Wuzhou hydrological station is forecasting flood peaks more than 6 meters above warning level. The water is still moving. The cause was Typhoon Maysak, the 10th named storm of the 2026 Western Pacific typhoon season. Maysak formed as a tropical depression on July 1st and was upgraded to a tropical storm by Japan's meteorological agency on July 2nd. It made its first landfall on the evening of July 3rd near Lingshui on Hainan Island, with sustained winds of 83 km per hour. It was not a powerful storm by typhoon standards, but it carried an enormous amount of moisture. After crossing Hainan, Maysak moved through the Gulf of Tonkin and made a second landfall on July 4th near Mong Cai in Vietnam's Quang Ninh province. It weakened to a tropical depression as it drifted inland over southern Guangxi. The remnant moisture, interacting with Guangxi's terrain and the regional monsoon, then dumped rain over the area for nearly 60 straight hours, from the morning of July 4th through the evening of July 6th. In Bafing village in Binyang County, stations recorded 713 millimeters of rain, about 28 inches, in a single 24-hour period between the morning of July 5th and the morning of July 6th. That was the highest 24-hour total measured anywhere in Guangxi during this event. In some areas, cumulative rainfall over the multi-day period exceeded 900 millimeters, more than 35 inches. That is more than half the region's average annual rainfall, compressed into days. That rain overwhelmed the water management system across the province. By July 6th, 341 reservoirs in Guangxi had exceeded their flood control water levels, according to Xinhua. 56 monitoring stations on 41 rivers were reporting levels above warning thresholds. More than 40 rivers and waterways had overflowed their banks. The worst failure occurred at Liulan Reservoir in Hangzhou, a county-level city east of Nanning and under its jurisdiction. Liulan is a medium-sized reservoir, the largest in the immediate area, built around 1960. Its total storage capacity is roughly 93 million cubic meters. It irrigates about 25,000 acres of farmland and supplies drinking water to around 170,000 people. It was engineered to handle a 1-in-100-year flood. On the morning of July 6th, cracks appeared in the dam body. More than 300 people living near the reservoir were moved to higher ground. At about 11 o'clock local time, 2 sections of the dam gave way, opening a breach roughly 50 meters wide. The reservoir's contents began pouring through that gap and flooding communities downstream. Nanning city government raised its flood control emergency response to level 1 at 11:30 local time, the highest tier in China's system, meaning all available resources were being mobilized. But for the communities directly below the dam, the water arrived before the response could reach them. A resident of Dangshu village, quoted by the Epoch Times, said, quote, "The flooding hit so fast, people simply could not get out," end quote. A second resident in Yunbia Township said older people in the area may not have known the danger was coming, and there was no time to notify everyone individually. On the same day, a second reservoir in Hangzhou, Yunbia Reservoir, also overtopped and breached. A third, Liulan Reservoir in Binyang County, overtopped but held. The combined failure and overflow from all three compounded flooding across the broader Nanning area. The confirmed death toll climbed fast. On the evening of July 6th, authorities reported 2 deaths. By the morning of July 7th, the count stood at 4 dead, 8 missing. Later that day it reached 6 dead, 11 missing. By Tuesday, July 8th, it was 38. And on Thursday, July 9th, Nanning's Vice Mayor Ding Wei announced at a press briefing that 39 people are confirmed dead and 9 reportedly missing. 26 of those deaths are directly attributed to the Liulan Reservoir breach, including 5 victims not yet identified. 7 of the 9 missing are from the Liulan area. Officials said the death and missing figures may overlap, as identification of some remains is still underway. In Hangzhou alone, 84,700 people have been affected, with 53,800 evacuated. In Binyang County, 8,600 are affected and all 8,150 requiring evacuation have been relocated. Across the wider region, 63 county-level areas spanning all 14 cities in Guangxi have been hit. As of 11 o'clock Thursday morning, 64,500 Nanning residents had been evacuated and resettled. The damage to infrastructure has been severe. Flooding and landslides have cut off more than 20 villages, severing roads, power lines, and telecommunications. A section of National Highway G242 collapsed in Kinju. Nearly 13,000 acres of farmland have been damaged. Electricity has been restored to more than 60,000 homes as of July 9, which gives some measure of how many lost power. More than 8,000 rescue personnel and about 5,700 boats have been deployed across the affected area. The Ministry of Emergency Management sent 2 wing-long military drones from Hubei province, a 3-hour flight, to fly over the hardest-hit zones and act as airborne mobile phone base stations. Those 2 drones restored coverage and handled more than 8,000 communication connections. Other drones were used for supply drops, nighttime lighting, infrared search operations, and damage assessment. The central government has allocated 260 million yuan, about $35.6 million, for flood and typhoon relief. The National Development and Reform Commission separately allocated 100 million yuan, about $13.7 million, for emergency recovery work in Guangxi, covering repairs to roads, water systems, schools, and hospitals. President Xi Jinping issued instructions on July 7, calling for, quote, all-out efforts in organizing flood emergency rescue, disaster relief, treatment of the injured, and resettlement of the affected people, end quote. He also called for inspections of rivers, lakes, aging reservoirs, and areas prone to geological hazards. The floods in Guangxi were not an isolated event. On July 7, rare tornadoes struck Hubei province in central China. An EF2 tornado hit the city of Huanggang, lifting trucks 30 meters into the air. 1 man was blown from a 12th-floor apartment. 11 people were killed and more than 300 injured in Hubei alone. That same day, a landslide in Gansu province buried 33 people in Tanchang County, killing 5. China was managing simultaneous disasters across multiple provinces. The flooding also triggered secondary hazards. In Hangzhou, roughly 900 snakes escaped a breeding farm after floodwaters washed through the facility on July 6. Most were non-venomous water snakes, but some were reported to be cobras. At least 1 villager was bitten and hospitalized. Separately, more than 100 animals, including alpacas, miniature pigs, zebras, raccoons, porcupines, and peacocks, escaped Guangxi Zoo after flooding breached their enclosures. The zoo told the public to keep their distance, warning that the animals may be frightened and aggressive. In Vietnam, Maysak's second landfall at Guangxi caused less severe but still significant damage. The storm knocked down about 1,600 trees, toppled 16 electricity poles, damaged roofs on 96 houses, and swept away 13 boats. Around 1,100 hectares of aquaculture were affected. Total material losses in Quang Ninh province were estimated at 20 billion Vietnamese dong, about $765,000. No deaths were confirmed, though 3 fishermen were reported missing and an unidentified body was found near the Guangxi coast on July 5. One dimension of this disaster that will be examined closely in the weeks ahead is the age and condition of China's reservoir system. The Liulan Dam was 66 years old when it failed. China has roughly 98,000 reservoirs, and many were built in the 1950s through the 70s. Structures designed decades ago for one set of rainfall assumptions are now facing storms that exceed those design limits. The Liulan Dam was built to withstand a 1-in-100-year flood. The rainfall that broke it appears to have gone beyond that threshold. Some residents have questioned the timing of warnings and evacuations before the breach. Officials have released public statements detailing emergency responses and rainfall data. These are attributed accounts on both sides, and a full picture of what was communicated, when, and to whom will take time to establish. As of Thursday afternoon, Vice Mayor Ding Wei said floodwaters in the Nanning area are receding, but warned that more rain is expected over the next 2 days. Downstream, the Wuzhou Hydrological Station on the Pearl River system is forecasting flood peaks exceeding warning levels by more than 6 meters. The Pearl River Basin connects Guangxi's flooding directly to Guangdong Province, which has issued its own red flood alert, the highest level. The death toll stands at 39. 9 people are missing. Identification of victims is ongoing. No overall damage estimate has been published. Cleanup crews are working through mud and debris in Hangzhou. Roads are being repaired. And 341 reservoirs across Guangxi remain above their flood control limits, each one under the kind of pressure that, 72 hours ago, split the Liulan Dam open. Subscribe to stay updated for the latest disaster reports.